Welcome to the Chase MedSearch podcast, the place where we dive deep into the medical device sales industry by discussing the current trends, timeless philosophies, and amazing experiences that shape our niche of the industry. Join me, Jordan Chase, on a guided tour as I speak with established sales leaders and professionals as they share stories that will help you get in, stay in, and thrive in your medical device sales career. Let's start the show. Welcome back to the Chase MedSearch podcast. My guest today is Angie Wiley, performance coach and owner of You Are Strong, a professional training and coaching organization. If you're on LinkedIn regularly, you've seen her short coaching videos and insights, most likely. They're terrific, and I encourage you to follow her on LinkedIn. Some hit the wall. We teach you to crush it is a mantra on their website, and Angie is here today to speak with us about her professional journey as an athlete, a very successful medical device rep and sales manager, and the founder of You Are Strong. Angie's business primarily is built around coaching athletes to develop a strong mental game. Of course, this translates to sales, and we're going to talk about that. Welcome to the show, Angie.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it and happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here. There's so many professional and personal interests in your story. You were a college basketball player, and we have a hopeful college basketball player in our house, and my daughter, Bea Chase.
Nice.
To open, just why is mentality so important in sports and in sales?
Oh my gosh. Well, I saw it at a very early age, the difference that it made when it came to your mindset and your mental game. I guess I was just aware, and you look around and you can see where, some people have the hard thing happen and they just fold, and then other people rise to the occasion. And all of that comes from the mindset. It comes from where you are mentally.
Absolutely. And there's so many tie-ins that we're going to explore for our audience between what they're doing in terms of medical device sales and what you did in the past. But I want to start with foundations because I always love to do that. Tell us about your background. You were a high performer as a high school athlete and ultimately, as I mentioned, played college basketball. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I did grow up in a small town here in the Midwest, and I kind of always laugh when I say it, but there wasn't a whole lot to do there. So I played all four sports in high school. So from there, I went on and I played 2 years of college basketball at Johnson County Community College in the Kansas City area. And then I transferred and went to Pittsburgh State University in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And so played all 4 years of college basketball, loved it, was on a very successful team, won 2 conference championships over 20 games, all 4 years. And so had a great career. I loved it.
Fantastic. What did you notice about what it took to perform at a consistently high level? Because winning conference championships, not everybody gets to do that or be a part of that. What did you see there?
I would say, one, it takes a team, to win a championship. And so we did have a great team, but it takes a team that has a lot of grit and a lot of resilience, right? Because the season can get long. You have a lot of things come at you, and it's continuing to, kind of like I just said, you're going to have obstacles coming your way. And some people figure out and persist and continue on even in the face of those obstacles, and other people will let up and fold. And collectively, I think I was fortunate enough that I was on teams where we came together and we fought through those hard moments and the challenges that we had. And again, I'll go back to, I think it's your mindset. When you look at how much your mindset matters, if you, Google it, you're going to see 80 to 90% is mental when you are out on that court, that field, whatever it is as an athlete.
When did you first become aware of that? What age were you when you first started noticing that mentality made the difference?
I was really young. I was really young because I did go to a lot of basketball camps. I was fortunate that in those basketball camps, they had a classroom setting. And in that setting, they started teaching, which was unusual for that time because that was a long time ago. But yeah, so I started noticing it then. And then, I was a pretty bad asthmatic growing up. And so I could tell very early on however my mindset was, it made a difference and it helped, even in terms of being able to breathe when I was out there. So
Sure.
yeah, so I connected on that piece very early and had a passion for it then. And of course, that's carried through my life.
Yeah. So when you got from high school to college, that's a different level. What needed to upgrade for you in terms of your thinking and your process?
I think it's just the next level. And I think that's how I looked at it. So it wasn't, some huge mountain. I just looked at it as the next level. And I'm a competitor at heart, and that's
Hmm.
just part of who I am. And so I am going to compete and fight and do everything I can to win. And so having that mentality that helped me over at the college level. And yeah, I would say it's that. And it kind of goes back to that grit and persistence and, not letting the mistakes and the things that come at you hold you back or knock you down. And at least if they do, you don't stay there.
Yeah. How did being a college athlete prepare you for sales? And when did you start thinking about sales as the next step in your journey professionally?
So, first, I'll talk about again, I grew up in a small town. And so, what I ended up doing in my career, I don't even think through college I realized it existed. So,
Yeah.
I actually went to college for teaching and coaching because that's what I had done, my whole life and got into the student teaching portion of what I was doing and realized this wasn't for me. And I had a good friend who was also a teammate, and she had gotten into sales. And I got excited about that. And I think it's the competitiveness of that career. And I started talking to enough people that I figured out that I wanted to go the device route. And so I was fortunate enough to land in that, even with my PE K through 12 teaching degree.
So you started out right in medical device sales out of college.
Well, I did not.
Hmm.
I got married. I had dated my husband through college. He was baseball and had gotten drafted and was playing in minor leagues for the Seattle Mariners. And we got married right out of college. And then he had played minor league ball through that time period. And he was released not too long
Hmm.
after we got married, and he started his own business. So I actually worked with him in his own business in the Kansas City area. And then when we sold that and moved to the Springfield area, that's when I got into device. So I was about 27
Okay.
when I landed in device.
So you had some experience under your belt being a business owner
Yes.
and working in a business
Yes.
and things like that, but I assume that wasn't related to medical. How did you get the first medical job?
Well, so times were very different back then, right? So I saw a little bitty ad in the newspaper and I FedExed my resume.
Okay.
So that's dating me. But that is how that unfolded. And, it was a blessing.
Hmm.
They were hiring for an associate position. And when you are an entrepreneur, you are able to show that you can run your own business. You're self motivated. I had done some of the sales portion of that. And so I had what it took to be in that position. I
Hmm.
just had to learn the medical side of things. But, also in my degree, I did have a fair amount of kinesiology, anatomy, and physiology. So it's not like all of that was new to me. I had a
Hmm.
fair amount of that in college.
Yeah. What did you notice when you got into the medical game, if you will? What was it about being there that you said, okay, this is how one becomes first competent and then a good, strong performer? What was that like for you to identify how to do that?
I'm very grateful that I had a strong gal that was running a territory and I got to work under her for a year.
Hmm.
So I learned a lot. And right out of the gates, I was orthopedic trauma and spine. I was with a company that we had 9 different product lines. So it was a lot.
Hmm.
But I think I liked the game of it.
Hmm.
That's what I got excited about. And it was the challenge of trying to hit a number. And so it let me carry on that competitive spirit that I have within me to the sales field and to the professional world. And so I think to me, it felt like a fairly easy transition in that way. Now, obviously, there was a load there, and
Hmm.
I was on trauma call and had a crazy busy schedule, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to.
Hmm. Absolutely. Trauma is I always joke and say, bring your lunch bucket to work
Yeah.
because you're going to work all
Yes.
day
Yeah.
and into the night sometimes. What similarities did you notice between what you had done in college athletics and in now your first medical device job? Were there similarities? I don't want to assume, but there might be.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that you say that. My one of my coach in junior college, he was extremely intense and he was a yeller. But he, of course, was just on us all the time. And then he would get frustrated and say, "This isn't brain surgery." And so, as I translated and started my career, and I was in, surgeries with spine and serious trauma, it kind of, made me chuckle. It transfers to, it's like, yes, it's a sport, but you are still under a lot of pressure as a college athlete. And so I feel like having that college experience, and even my first 2 years of having a coach that was extremely intense, that yelled, that absolutely helped me transfer, that to the OR, because you end up with physicians that are under a ton of stress. And when you are that low person in the room, you're going to take the heat sometimes. And so I felt like I was very well prepared to take the heat, if you will.
Hmm. Absolutely. It sounds like coming from a high pressure environment at a young age where you had to produce, had to perform, or you're going to be on the bench, right? Or maybe not even on the team,
Right.
into an environment where there's a patient on the table,
Right.
they're laid open, there's going to need to be some procedure performed and you need to maybe coach the physician through that or make sure you've got every single thing they could possibly need for any situation that comes up and be ready. Those things, there's correlations there is what I'm hearing.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah. So you got in, and obviously you did well. I think eventually you made a transition from that job into the spine business. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Actually was hired over into Kaifon.
Hmm.
And then Kaifon was, of course, bought by Medtronic in 2008. And so then I stayed under that Medtronic umbrella for the rest of my medical device career.
Yeah. How'd you get promoted? Because you became a sales manager, and a lot of people that listen to this would love to be a sales manager someday or think they would, but it's a hard job to get in medical. That first line sales management job is elusive for a lot of folks. How did you get promoted? What did it take? What were you doing to earn that kind of recognition?
I think I would say we had gone through, as a team and as a district, we had gone through challenges, right? As everyone does. But within that district, and we had our district sales manager who was a great district sales manager. I had a great leader. But in those challenges, I feel like I took some of those opportunities that I had to speak up and be a leader on our team and to be a strong leader. And when you go through challenges, of course, a lot of times, people will go to the negative. And I think I was trying to overcome some of that and combat that. And so I feel like my manager saw the leadership side of me probably throughout, the few years before I was actually hired as a manager.
Hmm.
And then it was a timing thing because my district manager was promoted. And so he was responsible for backfilling himself.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I had taken to the opportunity to be a leader when I didn't have that leadership title. And I know that that helped me to move into that district sales manager position.
That's great. Making the most out of what you have with the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would encourage everyone out there to be a leader where you are.
Hmm. Yeah. So, as a sales manager, now you're coaching and leading a medical device sales team in a very high performance environment. What did you discover that translated from all these years of developing a mentality into coaching others and helping others specifically develop and instill that mentality? How did you do that?
I feel like for me personally, it was a natural thing for me because, of all the years that I played sports, I was always a leader on the team. I was
Hmm.
a positive leader on the team. I was always an encourager, an uplifter, a driver because I'm competitive. And so I think a lot of those qualities that I had transferred easily for me in the district sales manager position. And obviously, I looked at us like we are a team and I'm a coach. And, my job was to help each one of them be the best that they could be. And I truly felt like that's what my job was. So I did feel like, the transition was fairly, simple.
Hmm. So much of your work now, and obviously then, was around and is around developing a strong mentality. And can you kind of take us through maybe somebody on your team that when you first started working with them, you could tell they needed to develop in this area and what that process looks like?
Yeah. So, when some people handle change more easily than others. And my experience in medical device, and I'm guessing it hasn't changed much, is that there is constant change.
Hmm.
There's constant change, there's constant challenges, things that are coming at you. And I have seen people, through the years who have a hard time with that. And even working with athletes today, it's like one of the things that I really talk through or even start with, because I think it's the foundation, is the power of your thoughts. And our thoughts are habits, and how you respond emotionally is a habit.
Hmm.
And unless you've ever done that much of this work and gotten pretty conscious about what you're thinking about, your brain will default to the negative. And so there were reps who, with change coming at them, would just default to the negative pretty quickly. And I guess through coaching them, it's learning that that negative insight is never going to help you. For you to default to the negative, it's only going to hold you in a low state.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so to be able to change your perspective, to look at things differently in more of that positive light, because your thoughts impact how you feel. And I always say you are going to show up your best and perform your best when you're in a high state. So if you're living in that negativity, you're not going to show up your best. And so working with them to change their perspective on how they were looking at things and teaching them that you have the ability to change your perspective. Like, you can change your story. And when you change a more positive story, you're going to be in a better place and you're
Hmm.
more likely to be successful when you do that.
Yeah. Sounds like identifying, isolating the root of the negative thinking. What are you thinking about? And then taking practical steps
Yes,
to address it is key,
absolutely.
because you tend to become what you think about.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard an interesting podcast clip the other day. I didn't even hear the whole interview, but I've been talking to my kids about it. And it was, I believe, a neuropsychologist who's being interviewed. And she said, when you can recognize that you're in the spiral of thinking negatively, whether it's depression or
Mhm.
sadness or anger or just this impending sense of failure professionally or whatever it might be, it's very simple. And you can weigh in on this too. But she said, stop. And when you recognize it, stop. And then just instead of saying out loud, just in your mind, just shout, get out, just mentally to those thoughts. And, it's a simple thing,
Mhm.
but I have found, at least the last 2 days, that is extraordinarily helpful. It's like you're just kicking out those negative thoughts out of your mind. Just get out. And told my kids about it because they're involved in athletics and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see if it works for them. But from an expert, that was her recommendation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I love that. And one thing that I would say, just to be aware of too, is that when the negative thought starts happening, the quicker you can be aware and recognize it and catch it, the
Mm-hmm.
faster you're going to be able to tell it to stop or get out.
Mm-hmm.
When you are unconscious and you let that negative thought keep going, you're going to continue to add more negative thoughts to it, which creates a bigger negative story. And it can get a little bit harder to shut it down when it's created a lot of momentum,
Yeah.
right? So I tell athletes or, salespeople, business people, whoever I'm working with, you've got to be aware of what you're thinking about. And the faster you can catch yourself in a negative thought, negative dialogue, you're giving yourself more power to be able to change it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I also like to teach, which would be layering onto what she said, is when you tell it to get out, you also replace it with something, and you
Yeah.
replace it with
Mm-hmm.
the story that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps to subside the negative story, because what you resist persists. So if
Yeah.
you are just telling yourself, okay, stop thinking negative, well, guess what? You're still thinking negative because that's where your focus is, right?
Right.
So, and
Yeah.
so you've got to replace it. So if you're saying, get out, stop, well, then you need that next step, and you need, like, okay, what story do I want to tell?
Mm-hmm.
And so then that lets you pull in and create the dialogue in your mind that you want.
Yeah. That's good stuff right there. What other barriers do you find exist to developing a strong mentality?
I'll touch on a couple things here, but we've touched on the power of your thoughts, and that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big barrier because most people, and I tell, if I'm working with athletes, I worked with a football team this morning, and I told them most adults do not pay attention to what they're thinking about.
Hmm.
So that is the foundation, because if you are on autopilot and you're not thinking about what you're thinking about, you have no control over it, and your brain is going to default to the negative. So that alone right there is the very foundation. And then the next level is learning and understanding that whatever you're thinking about is going to control your emotions. And then your emotions are going to control how you feel. And then how you feel determines the actions that you're going to take or not take,
Hmm.
right? So it all goes back to the foundation of how powerful your thoughts are.
Yeah.
But I love this segment around controlling your state, because again, like I touched on it earlier, we all have high states and we all have low states. And that stems from the stories that you're telling, the thoughts that you have going on in your head. And so, because that high state, of course, is when you're confident, you feel great, you're performing in flow, whatever that is for you. And then the low states are when you're frustrated, you don't have confidence, you're down on yourself. And so I think everybody can resonate with both of those, because we're all human. So we go back and forth, but the more conscious you can be around what are you focused on, because what you focus on is going to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, flipping your thoughts is going to help determine whether you are living in a high state or a low state.
It's really interesting, the whole concept of thinking about what you're thinking about or paying attention to what you're
Mhm.
thinking about. I never really thought about it as an adult until kind of recently. And I wish I
Mhm.
would have discovered that a lot earlier in my career and in my life.
Yeah,
We just don't think, like you said, most adults don't pay much attention to what they're thinking about.
they don't. And again, it's like our thoughts become habits. And
Hmm.
so what you thought about yesterday, you're going to think about today, and you're going to think about tomorrow, unless you are doing the work, like how I refer to it. If you are being conscious and you are doing the mindset work, the mental game work, the, personal professional development type of work, the more conscious you're being, that is when you have more power to start changing it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, I tell you, so college athlete, and then you were kind of co-owner of a business, and then medical device sales and medical device sales management at arguably one of the top companies in the entire world, and now owner of You Are Strong. Tell us about that part of your journey to founding You Are Strong, and how you did that.
Okay, so as I shared, I bought into the mental game and the mindset really early on, and I got very interested in it. And so it really is a part of who I am. It's what I read, it's what I listen to. And in college, I looked at, sports psychology. And at that
Hmm.
point, I was told there were no jobs in it. So my minor is in psych. And I felt like out of college, I had a calling to work with athletes. And I had a question in my mind, like, why is this not taught? Like, why, are some of these concepts that I've been exposed to, why is it not taught? And I have to tell you, that question never went away for me. And
Hmm.
I started down that road right out of college, teamed up with one of my teammates. We started a book even. And then, of course, life hit us and we both had kids and got into careers. And so it got tabled. But I share that because I know that there's other people out there who have a calling, or have had that tap on their shoulder that they're supposed to do something. And
Sure.
it was in 2012 when that tap would not go away for me. And my youngest daughter was middle school at the time, and she was an athlete. And my son was high school playing competitive baseball. And it's like, this stuff is still not taught. And why are these? And I just felt like there was such a missed opportunity to instill some of this in young people before they go out, into the world, because sports parallels life. And so to me, I teach life. And so in 2012, I hired a coach to hold me accountable to figure it out and to start moving forward. And yes, I was a district sales manager, probably covering 4 or 5 states at the time. I had my kids were in competitive sports, but I started to fit it into the cracks of my day, if you will, and started off. So I established You Are Strong in 2013 part-time, and I started teaching mental game boot camps here locally.
Nice. Mental game boot camps. Tell us about that.
Well, I just started out with the foundation of even some of what we've shared here, getting young athletes aware of, because one of the biggest obstacles you see is so many athletes feel like they're supposed to play perfect. They get frustrated. They don't understand how to handle those mistakes and failures that they come up against. And so I started teaching the foundation of starting to pay attention to your thoughts, and your thoughts lead to your beliefs, and you are never going to outperform your belief in yourself. So it's a process of helping young athletes gain confidence and learning how to redefine those failures and mistakes so that they look at them differently. Because I think probably for the most part, young athletes, they have a mistake or a failure, however, whatever that is. But then they start defining themselves like, why did I do that again? I can't believe I just did that. I'm not good enough. And who do I think I am? So it's that downward spiral of negative thinking when the mistake happens. And so I started just teaching the basics so they could start flipping that.
Yep. That's great. That's great. I've seen it. I've been around young athletes for a long, long time, not just my kids, but obviously their friends and teammates and things like that. And you can almost visually see it where they're at in their thinking. And it's an odd rhythm in that you need to play almost like you don't care, and you'll perform better.
You're going to perform if you can just
you
let
give
it all
maximum
go.
effort. Yeah, it's a weird dynamic, but that goes on there. So you're doing this part-time at this point in 2013. You've established this mental boot camps that you're running, and then you eventually end up doing this full-time and leaving the medical device industry. And obviously I'm aware there were some personal tragedy involved here. Can you speak to that for us? Just some hard times that you went through.
Yes. Like all of us, life comes at us, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in 2014, you heard me speak of my husband earlier. He was minor league baseball, so we were both athletes. We basically grew up together because we went through our college years together even, and, maintained a pretty healthy lifestyle. And both of us, still worked out, ate healthy. And in 2014, he had recurring bronchitis. And we had stopped it thinking he was just going to get antibiotics and we could be on our way. And come to find out he had pneumonia and ultimately was diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer. And he was running at the time.
Wow.
And it was not a good diagnosis. It was not surgical. We went to MD Anderson, of course, did the appointments here in town, and then went to MD Anderson, and they did not have any good answer for us. And pretty much knew that it's like if we just, and this is my personal opinion, but it's like we knew if we jumped into chemo, radiation, all of that, it's like if you look at it, he probably would have had, 12 to 18 months. And my son at the time was a senior in high school. Our oldest was 24. And our son, like the week that we found out that Chuck was diagnosed with lung cancer was also the week that our son actually signed to play college baseball.
Wow.
Our daughter was in middle school, and so it's like we had a busy family,
Mm-hmm.
but we decided to go holistic.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a belief that the body is a very powerful,
Yeah.
can be very powerful, and so we went outside the country
Mm-hmm.
twice, and very blessed, right? That medical device provides the resources for us to be able to do that. But we went outside the country twice for holistic treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And he maintained that holistic treatment for over 3 years. And it was pretty extensive. It was a lot.
Wow.
But, we kind of just pitched in, we did it, and we were, we're fighting for his life. And so you're just going to kind of do whatever you have to do. And
Yep.
if anything else, we believed we were buying time, and we do believe it gave us more time. He
Mm-hmm.
ultimately lived 5.5 years. He
Wow.
passed in May of 2020.
Hmm.
And
And then a pandemic came along.
yeah, so we had my son was then a college senior pitching from
Yeah.
Missouri State.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter was a senior in high school, and she had signed to run track at KU.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
and then the pandemic hits, and so
Yeah.
it takes both of our kids out of their spring sport. He, at the time, it's not like he was on hospice or anything. We did do the bouts of chemo and all of that, and you do what you can with the combination. And
Mm-hmm.
at that point, though, he was kind of done with all of that, and we really had kind of done everything we could. So he was back on some holistic stuff. And, the pandemic hits, and he had a business at the time, which also had become a struggle because he wasn't able to run it. So it was a challenge. So we had that on our plate as well. And then he passed, and I say suddenly, but obviously not suddenly when you had been up against this fight for so long. But again, like he wasn't on hospice. So it did just, it kind of hit where
Sure.
it was a 911 call, and he went to the hospital. I'm very thankful the hospital let our family in, because again, it was during COVID.
Wow.
And so yeah, so at least we all got to be with him. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Mm-mm-mm.
hard stuff.
Hard stuff. And I mean, what do you say? You survived it, and I think you have a foundation set up and established in his honor.
We do, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So of course, we're an athletic family, and he always had a huge heart for giving,
Mm-hmm.
and we helped, a lot of kids and families along the way. And so I just kind of felt like what better thing to do than to just, it's like, even in
Yeah.
lieu of flowers, like, it's like, I don't want all this money spent on flowers. It could go to something good.
Right.
Right. And so I just was like, in lieu of flowers, like we set up and established a foundation for athletes in need, because we also knew, it's like you said, you have athletes. And
Yeah.
so it's like, what it costs to
Oh, yeah.
keep
Mm-hmm.
your athletes
Yep.
going, and to travel and travel ball, and,
Mm-hmm.
just even entry fees. And so we established that. And I had a very good friend of mine who actually I had hired for Medtronic. So he was one of my reps here in town, and he
Hmm.
called me within a day or two, and he's just like, "Hey, do you care if I start a baseball tournament?" And I was kind of like, "Are you sure?" Like, what?
Wow.
And so, yeah, so he kicked it off in 2020 with the
Yeah.
first baseball tournament. And I think he had 12 teams together, but he still
Uh-huh.
made some money. We started the foundation between the
Yeah.
flower money and that
Yep.
first tournament, and it let us start a nonprofit. And this past summer, we had our 5th annual baseball tournament, and man, to see how that has
Yeah.
evolved has just been incredible. We had over 90 teams the last 2 years in this tournament, multiple locations,
Mm-hmm.
so many volunteers. It's a very cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did the pre-call before the show, and as I learned more about your story, I'm just thinking, wow, this woman has so much to teach me and so many others about mentality and resilience and grit and determination. It is amazing, and I'm glad that you are sharing it through your business with even high school athletes. We're talking about some young athletes, maybe not even pre-high school athletes. I don't know. But, it's so needed in our society today. And it's incredible that you found it. How can people find your business? How can they, if they're listening, so many people I know have kids who are athletes that are medical device reps. How could they find you?
Yeah, probably one of the easiest ways is my website, and it is youarestrong.com. My info is on there. My number, my email is on there. You can also kind of check out what I do through that website.
Mm-hmm.
That website is geared towards athletes. I have worked with sales teams and I do work with women in business. And I'm also on all the social platforms. So you can find me, I think, on just about every social platform as well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, Angie, thank you for coming by the Chase MedSearch podcast to share your insights here. It's fantastic. And you are strong. That makes a lot of sense, that to be the name of your business. And I appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on the Chase MedSearch podcast. I hope that you gained some helpful insight from today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and give us a like on your favorite streaming platform. It really helps grow our audience. For more information on Chase MedSearch, visit our website at chasemedsearch.com. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, I'm Jordan Chase, and this has been the Chase MedSearch podcast.